of all confusion, called ignorance. The third is the confused mind, called sensation. The fourth is the false world as known to the senses and called the objective. Influences may be thus illustrated. Clothes have no scent, but if anyone smoked them with incense, the clothes would then be perfumed like the incenses. So it is with influences. The true reality is pure and has really no confusion coloring it, but ignorance in man colors his views, so that there is a confused state. The confusion caused by ignorance has really no true purity, but the true reality influences the mind, so that there is an effort after the true purity. How is it that confused influences are acting incessantly? It is in relation to the true model that there is ignorance as a cause of the confusion. This ignorance colors the true model in the finite mind. As there is an influence at work, there arise false imperfect ideas, and these color the true model again so that one does not understand it. Unenlightenment then arises, bringing a new world of false conceptions on account of this result. These false ideas in turn color other false conceptions again, causing the mind to be fixed on these, and to desire to do all sorts of things, incurring thus all kinds of trouble of both mind and body. The influences of the false objective world are of two kinds, namely, those which arise from increased thought, and those which arise from increased action.
The influences of the false imperfection of faculties are of two kinds, namely, those which arise voluntarily from faculties producing the highest saints of the lower school, the highest saints of the middle school, and the highest saints of the advanced school, causing them to suffer the sorrows of life and change, and those which arise involuntarily from faculties producing ordinary men and causing them to suffer the sorrows of successive transmigrations. The influences of ignorance are of two kinds. First, those which arise from the very root of things, intuition, which give rise to imperfect sensation, and second, those which arise from the senses and desires, and which give rise to imperfect impressions.
How is it that pure influences are acting incessantly? It is because there is a true model able to influence the ignorant, a power at work causing man's misguided mind to dislike the sorrows of transmigration and to seek the joys of divine rest. As this ignorant mind is moved to dislike transmigration and love nirvana, this fact influences the finite mind to believe that its nature is finite and to know that its finite mind is full of false ideas, and further, that there is no true objective world before men, and that therefore they are to cultivate some way of deliverance. As from the true model man knows that there is no objective world, then the various means of following and obeying this true model arise spontaneously, and when influenced by this power for a long time, ignorance disappears. As ignorance disappears, then false ideas cease to arise. When false ideas cease to arise, the former objective world also ends. As the forces cease to exist, then the false powers of the finite mind cease to exist, and this is called nirvana, when the natural forces of the true reality alone work.
The influence of the imperfect mind is of two kinds, namely, that which arises from positiveness and literalness, as in common men and in those of the two lower schools, causing them to dislike the rounds of transmigration and, according to their strength, to gradually move towards the unsurpassed way of Buddhism, and that which arises from the five faculties of the mind, where the higher saints start to copy the true model to reach nirvana quickly. The influence of the true model, which is of two kinds, namely, that which arises from subjective influences of the true model element itself, and that which arises from outward conditions. The influence of the true model itself is from eternal ages, having infinite resources complete with benefits beyond all thought. It underlies the nature of all phenomena. On account of this twofold aspect, the power of these influences is unceasing, causing all men to dislike the sorrows of transmigration and seek the joys of nirvana, believing that in their own persons there is the influence of the true model, and that therefore they have a mind to cultivate it.
Question 5. If this be so, that all living beings have the true model in them, and that all will be equally influenced, why should there be the infinite distinction of believing and unbelieving, some first and others later? Should not all at the same time know the power of the true model, causing them to diligently cultivate the means of deliverance, and enabling all to enter nirvana?
Answer. The true reality is originally only one, but the degrees of ignorance are infinite, therefore the natures of men differ in character accordingly. There are unruly thoughts more numerous than the sands of the Ganges, some arising from ignorant conceptions and others arising from ignorance of senses and desires. Thus all kinds of wild thoughts arise from ignorance, and have first and last infinite differences which the Tathagata alone knows. Again, in the method of all the Buddhas there are means of utilizing their forces. The nature and the means must be at work to be complete. Just as wood, though it has fire latent in it, cannot burn unless men know this and use means to call it forth, so with men although there is the power of the influence of the true model in them, if it does not meet with the noble forces of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas as a means to call it forth, there would be no means of preventing wild thoughts, and thus, of attaining nirvana. And although there would be the force of outward conditions, yet without the influence of the true model there would not be the power by which one could discard the sorrows of transmigration and seek the joys of nirvana.
If the forces and the means of utilizing them are complete, such as the force of the influences of the true model, and also of the loving vows of the perfected Buddhas, and of the almost perfect saints to save the world, there arises a dislike to sorrow and a belief in nirvana and the cultivation of a good character. When the good character is attained, such people find the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas teaching them directly the benefits and the joys of the doctrine, and they are able to enter into the way of nirvana. The influence of outward conditions. This is the power of outward forces, and these outward conditions are incalculable. We indicate two kinds, those of different methods and those of the same spirit.
As to the influences of different methods, they are those which operate when men follow the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas from the beginning of their desire to seek truth till they themselves become Buddhas, and which influence them all through their course, be it in what they see or think, whether through their own family, parents, or relatives, or through servants, or dear friends, or through enemies, or by means of the four attractions, such as those caused by alms, kind words, help and sharing in toil, even including all sorts of incalculable means, in order to set in action the power of the loving influences of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, so as to induce all beings to increase in goodness and benefit by what they see or hear. These means are also of two kinds, namely, the direct, which enables one to get saved quickly, and the indirect, which enables one to get saved after a longer time. The direct and indirect means are again of two kinds, namely, the progressive practice and the final attainment. As to influences of the same spirit, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas desire to deliver all men from sorrow, and these spirits influence men constantly without ceasing, and they are of the same nature and wisdom and power, therefore manifest the same spirit in all their experience. This